Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Submitted for Your Approval, the weekly card review show for Collective, the community-created card game where you make the cards and we review the cards, and that is our job. We are joined today by my faithful co-host, Grief.
Howdy, folks.
And my hippity-happity-hoppity co-host, Empty Folder.
Hello, everyone.
You get 3 adjectives today. That's the only thing we're doing for Easter. If that's all you wanted out of the episode, then you're good to cut out. Let's jump straight into it with the accepted submissions. What makes these ones different is that these are in the game, like in the game now, for you to have and hold for a low price of sometimes up to about 275 amber. Brecca Strongheart is a 6-drop spirit 3/5 snake fish human warrior from Saga. With Duelist, Regenerate, and Summon, create a copy of every allied unit that doesn't share a tribe with another ally. So a couple of super cool notes from this. This uses the Looking Glass AI. So this is actually a choice made by Spikebird, but it is actually the work of several community artists as well as one of these AIs. And I think this AI is really good at creating some very interesting pictures. There were some of these that, even though they looked a little off, I kind of wanted them on cards, and so I was really excited to see this. And I thought the effect was really interesting because it's like kind of menagerie, but then it also, like, if you're working off a bunch of like unique tribe synergy, it kind of doesn't work because like you do this and now you have a bunch of duplicates on board. Like, so it doesn't, you can't stack this effect twice, which I thought was actually a really neat choice. Grief, what do you think of this?
It was a cool card to fill basically a niche and menagerie deck. So it's a cute kind of playstyle when you want to have multiple beat sticks or something like that. Because 6 maybe be the top end for that aggro or mid-range deck for you. And in that case, okay, cool. Now I have my beat sticks or go face units basically twice. So that's a cute idea to do, cute idea to have. Overall, it's just an okay card.
Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree with Grief. I mean, Spirit's kind of in a bad spot right now. It's kind of hard to get to the point where this can really do things. But like, I mean, the potential is definitely there. Like, this can get you huge board presence relatively cheaply. So we'll see.
Another thing I do like about this is, and maybe this is a design direction to pursue, the notion of units that become tribeless because then they do not share tribes with themselves, or units that are tribeless, because that could, I don't know, that could maybe be a direction. The White Mage is a 1-drop spirit 0/2 human healer arcanist from Saga with Regenerate and give an ally unit or a unit in your hand +1 HP. This is, the art worries me. Grief, is that why you picked this? Does the art
Why
worry
does it worry you?
Because it looks like character from Beloved Property by Square Enix. I don't know. Grief, tell me about this.
You know that the White Mage isn't actually a property.
But that looks like that White Mage. I don't know.
Things like, I don't know what game you're talking about.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I don't know what Final Fantasy part because I never played any of these besides Final Fantasy 7.
Okay. 7? Oh, you said 7, not 8. 8's my favorite. For those of you who's a little interesting trivia bit. Grief, what do you think about this card? Interesting little dab proper upper.
Just a cute little effect, basically it. Also, another Saga card. Cool that people design cards for it. More or less, actually, it's fine enough. This was a Rock Angel card art that has been basically present for like almost 2 years now. The Nunes stumbled over it. Well, yeah, it's just a cute little effect. Probably decent and limited. That's basically it.
MT, what do you think of this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one when considering the dot rework, because I think it loses a lot of its potential if the posted one is actually the one that ends up getting into the game. It's going to be really interesting to see if anything happens with these sort of dot staples that are just there for XP gain after that change goes through and they no longer really have a place.
I'm trying. The thing that like makes me curious about this card is I'm trying to remember. Do we use healer? Because when I was doing the class tribe initiative, I tried to give us one for those like medicine folk, doctor types.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah. So I mean, I actually think it would be nice to maybe get this tribe on other cards that are already in the collection, because I remember trying to get one for the doctor medicinal folk type things, but maybe we did get a word and it was a different word. I can't remember how that worked out.
I mean, when you're already talking about putting other cards in it isn't funny enough, when you mentioned Squanix, do you actually know what Rock Angel is pretty much known for?
What's he known for?
She's basically known for just using characters that exist in other games.
Have
you ever looked at the weird barrier card? That's basically Saber from the Fate franchise.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know. Moving right along. The Immortal King Kazrik is a 5-drop strength 3/3 dwarf lord from Vanarad. With summon, your units get +1 attack and the associated keyword for each of the following you have less of than your opponent. Max mana, ward. Cards in hand, agile. Units in play, overrun. And if all three, Kazrik gains immortal, making him the Immortal King Kazrik. Fun story for those of you who are watching this. In the document, Empty put his name with a with a C at the end of it, CK, and I'm like, where's Kaz Morty? Empty, what do you think of this card?
This is a really, really cool design for a Vanarad legendary. Like making this sort of deck where you're like intentionally losing in hand, max mana, and units in play is really cool. And then like that sort of flexibility where like you only really need 2 of these to be online for this to be an effective card. That is the one problem with this though, is that we have like no max mana loss in standard. So it's nearly impossible to get all of them off.
Yeah, so
it's
like
a
a
really
card
neat
that still
design.
needs its support at the moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like dwarf support has not exactly had a smooth history.
Yeah.
So it may be unlikely that it comes back.
Grief, what do you think of this?
Cute legacy card, very interesting card for standard. Yeah, sure, the max mana thing can basically happen pretty much less than most of the time when it comes to like units or the cards in hand. But we have ramp, so that can be a thing. Outside of that, it's just a decent card. It's a cool little new legendary that does something different. Mm-hmm. And actually uses its tech space sensibly.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because like the aggro game plan is like, okay, but you're gonna have to be behind on board and behind in hand, which is in and of itself kind of like yipesy. But I mean, if you can pull it off, you can do something cool with it. And I don't know.
I mean, against control, you sort of just fall behind on hand naturally, and then giving all your stuff ward is like super. Oh no, that's max mana. I mean, agile's still nice, I guess.
I mean, agile is basically if your plan is going tall. So the cards in hand, like that's pretty easy to have. That's pretty easy. Just dump your hand with cheap units, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now all of them have overrun. If they're basically good stats for the cost, that's just a lot of more damage push. Yeah, behind on board. As I said, going tall, cute little Helden support.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so these cards are not like the other cards that are accepted and you can have them. These cards, you cannot have them, but you can vote for them, and then after you vote for them, you might be able to have them. Mushy Shuffler is a 4-drop 9/3/4 sweet pill shroom from Zucrose, with when you play a candy, shuffle 3 glacé truffles into the enemy deck. And then that thing does give a random allied unit with the highest attack -2 attack and charm, and when drawn, play this and draw a card. I like this a lot for so many reasons. It is beautiful. Like, the art is just masterclass. It is a pill shroom, which we have not seen one of those in forever. And it's got a little, it's a little traps card, and that's really, really neat. Synergizes with candy and synergizes, or you have to have candy to get the engine going, but you can get a lot of good stuff out of it. Grief, what do you think of this?
Basically, candy slash sweet support for victory. Functions well, is a cute little trap effect. Is just another piece for the deck. That's kind of it. It's a very good control tool. Problem is that in a control matchup, this kind of does nothing besides being a 4-mana 3/4. That doesn't really affect your opponent, considering the fact that, okay, cool, this card replaces itself. So even if they draw it, yeah, they don't have a board. There's no negative to it. The charm effect is kind of hilarious in terms of units having in terms of an aggro matchup. But yeah, it kind of just exists in that kind of matchup. Okay.
MD, what do you think of this?
I like the idea. I think this version is just way too slow. 4 mana is like quite a bit for an effect like this that has no immediate impact. And then even when you do like play a bunch of candies, it still doesn't really have any immediate impact. You have to hope your opponent draws into the truffles quickly, and 3 isn't all that much, especially if you're playing against something that doesn't run a ton of card draw.
Or just even not run a ton of units. I mean, even if you're doing the...
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Against control, it does nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, it does the -2 attack, maybe if you're somebody who's against someone who's running like a more controlly version of like Dune Walkers, that's the thing. But like the charm, like you also have to have a board to make the most of the charm, right?
Yeah.
So the
Well, and
version
against
of the
Dune
trap deck
Walkers,
I'm familiar with doesn't have a whole lot of. But
yeah. And again, against Dune Walkers, it's going to be completely random because everything has 1 attack.
Yeah. But yeah, it was really cute, and it is doing really well. It's sitting at about 9. So this might update, maybe, please. I would like to see this thing be a thing. The Door Technician is a 2-draw mind 1/2 human scientist from nowhere in particular with Ward, and when a card enters your deck, give it -1 cost. Empty, you want to guess how many votes this is sitting at the subreddit?
0.
Do you why is this sitting at 0?
Door to a familiar place.
There we go. That's the bit. No, so Excalibur did this, and then he did another one, which was a creature that had the Door tribal that had nothing to do with what the doors are doing. And both of these were just like, have you taken a minute to play with these cards? I mean, it's maybe an interesting idea, finding a way to synergize with this. And I could imagine a version of this thing that works. It just doesn't seem to be informed by the reality of what these things were already trying to sit here and do. Art's pretty decent. Flavor's actually really cute. It's just the design is like needs a lot of work. Empty, what do you think of this?
So I actually think this is a neat design, but it's a pretty simple case of we can either have Door Technician or Door to a Familiar Place. We already have Door to a Familiar Place in the game. We cannot have Door Technician. They're just too strong together. And yeah, that's pretty much my analysis of it.
Yeah. Grief, what do you think of this?
This is just kind of bonkers. Like, yeah, sure, look at the door effects that shuffle stuff back into your deck. But in general, any kind of synergy that allows you to just put cards back in on top of your deck, into your deck, whatever, doesn't need to be a door. Is just discounting your cards. So even creating cards in your deck. Oh, now my tokens cost like 0. If they did cost something in the first place, whatever. This also having ward on top of it is kind of silly. Overall, this is just kind of pretty crazy for a card design.
So yeah, with
So
this,
we-
and I also did want to comment on that. Please don't put door tribal on something that's not a door. Like the doors were supposed to be mechanically minded, but I do actually like playing around in this space. It's just the way that they're doing it is not gonna work. And so quirky design, cool design. I wanted to actually highlight it and talk about it because I thought it was cool. It's just it's still got
yeah,
some
it's
issues.
cool. It's just pretty busted.
Yeah, pretty much. And the Cardshot Cowboy is a 3-drop mine 3/3 psychic aberration from Verstalt with summon surmise. And after an enemy plays a marked card, play Cardshot. Cardshot says choose a 1 HP enemy, deal 1 damage to it. For the rest of the game, increase all numbers on your card shots by 1. Okay. So it is Grief's turn, and I will have Grief go first. Empty, why did you make me sad?
Why are you sad?
He's not a gunslinger.
Oh yeah,
He's
I
got
mean,
a
it's
gun
not
in the
using
picture.
a real gun.
We have a
He's-
gun try. No, okay. So quick analysis. Yeah, I feel this is clunky because it's like you have to hit the exact like ladder, but maybe I'm wrong. Grief, what do you think of this?
Does this account for all your Cardshot Cowboys?
Yep.
So it's like
Okay.
it's like a Green Man
It's
style
like
property
absolute
where your
scaling,
card shot is a
basically.
property you have, and all of your card shots slide up at once.
I kind of don't like this card.
I like the idea. I just think it's clunky because I mean if it's at or less,
Oh, that'd be gross.
because the ladder is so hard. If you miss a rung, you just lose access to the thing.
Why are you actually suggesting a way more busted version of this card?
No, okay. So Grief, give me your analysis.
Okay, this is basically a good idea until you actually hit 4. At 4,
Yeah.
this becomes extremely clunky. Because the unit density of, or this cases where you actually hit a 4 or 5 HP unit, yeah, sure, come up. The problem is it's way less the case than actually having this card matter in the first 2 to 3 instances where it actually matters. Because marking cards with this card is kind of awkward. You surmise a card, you get 1 card shot over it, and yeah, okay, you hit a 1 HP unit. Problem is, this card costs 1 mana, meaning that most of the time, most 1 HP units are either dead, are utilitarian, have some form of protection, or actually buffs on them, or whatever the case is with them. Usually there are just a few stranglers around that HP value. Okay, so you need a second effect or a second mark card to actually pull that off for the 2 HP threshold, which at that point is a little bit more reasonable. 3 HP, okay, you hit a lot more units, especially around the time this card drops. The problem is your opponent had to actually play already 2 marked cards that they haven't played before you actually hit a Cardshot Cowboy. So the weird thing about this card is it needs a little bit of setup, and funny enough, actually everything that has to go right for you to actually hit targets with it. Meaning that this kind of card sits in the, oh yeah, I want to support some /marked, but I only function like 80 to 50% of the time when I'm actually on the board.
Oh, I just realized when it says all numbers, it means its own cost too, doesn't it?
Oh my god.
That's not, you don't have to pay the cost. It just force plays it. It's similar to a War Shaman.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
create
don't
it, it just
recur
plays
those.
it.
They're really bad.
Okay. MC, tell me about this.
Yeah, so essentially, from playing with psychics for a while, one of their biggest weaknesses is that they don't really have a way to interact with the board well. Like you can lock your opponent's hand pretty effectively, but against control, that's great. But against aggro, like they've already developed the board and you don't have a way of getting rid of it at all. So essentially I was like, okay, I need to make some sort of way to interact with the board and deal some damage. But I didn't want to just have it be like dealing straight damage because I didn't think that'd be all that interesting to play with. So the idea behind this card is that you set up your marks in a way that like when your opponent is playing their card, that sets you up for the next HP because the card shot happens after that card is played. So you want to chain the marks if you can with the HP values that your card shots are at. It's sort of awkward, but I think it'd be like really OP if it wasn't that way. So
yeah, the problem is, why don't you just do something with it that actually synergizes with the surmise or mark mechanic, like bounce, send on top of deck.
I already have bounce, and top of deck would be really frustrating.
Anyways, it's still at vote, so we can't really comment on how well it's doing, etc., etc. Todd the Perished is a 5-drop strength 4/4 robot vampire from Mortstall, Realm of the Dead Things, with Vigilant, and if this dies before combat, revive it. An active, destroy an ally unit and gain 1 mana. So this is really interesting. I don't like it because if you give this thing Duelist, it's referring to before the combat step, right? So like,
Yes.
if you could give this Duelist, you have basically an infinitely recurring Duelist that can only get destroyed if
Well,
you
it doesn't
have
ready
some
itself.
kind of removal that, yeah, I don't like this.
You have to give it Duelist, then it actually, the thing is like, okay, cool, you give it Duelist, it dies, it returns without Duelist.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like cool that you're actually cutting off a case that cannot really happen.
Well, I mean, it's not that we don't have any cards that wouldn't just give it permanent Duelist, or a way to basically emulate that. But yeah, you're right. Good point. Empty, what do you think of this?
I mean, it's sort of just like an unremovable 5-drop. I guess it's decent against like the Proma control matchup. But it's kind of meh everywhere else. The mana gain is like, it comes down a bit late for that to really be all that relevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right.
Grief, what do you think of this?
I mean, first of all, it's not Todd, it's Todd.
Okay.
Todd is the god, and Todd is death. Yeah, it's actually a fine card. Okay, cool. It's a 5-drop, 4/4 that has vigilance, so you can actually use it as pseudo ramp. It is finally something that kills stuff off, because most of the time we have, oh yeah, when I die, when this enters the graveyard, whatever, I deal damage, I draw your card, I pay off your student loan, whatever. But we don't really have the Sack enablers. This is just a decent-ish enabler because of the vigilant. You can always actually utilize it as an attacker or blocker. And this is just a safety valve. Because if this wouldn't have the intim effect, this would be utter garbage. Let's be honest. So overall, this is just a fine little 5-drop. It's not going to make your deck overly aggressive. It's decent that it has inbuilt ambush / agile, but yeah, it's just okay.
I don't know. Well, I was just more curious because like it's sitting at 2, which means that I think maybe it's like even the people who liked it didn't like it enough, and the people who didn't like it weren't going to be sold on it. Is there anything we can think of in the way of how to fix it?
Nah.
I don't know.
I would just try it again.
The Reusable Partling reprint is a 1-drop mind 1/1 robot from ADIV with rebound, summon, give a robot in your hand, +1/+1 permanently. I don't know who posted this. I don't like reprints. I don't know why you wanted to talk about a reprint in the thing. So Grief, go.
More or less for the case of for the case that okay, reprints. How do we handle them? Basically, do we even care too much? Do we care on the show? That's why I brought it up, because I just recently saw the reprint discussion or argument again, and I was like, okay, cool. They are basically as they are as possible to get into the game as they were before. It just basically goes to show, okay, are people interested in? There are 4 votes on this card. I think that's kind of telling how much people care about reprints. So I just wanted to open up the discussion because, as I said, if a week is slow enough, I will bring back stuff like update discussions. And God,
Yeah.
This week was terrible.
So part of my opposition to reprints is for those of you who haven't watched this show before. First of all, hope you're enjoying your first episode. I'm a single player guy. I don't do the multiplayer shenanigans. I don't do standard. I don't really do the legacy league. I'm more into this game as the creative tool, but also as just a fun little time waster. And so that's why I'm just so opposed to reprints, because I would rather see new cards in the game. Like, I think that's the point of collective, or a good chunk of the point for me. And so they just, not only do they not excite me, but I am opposed to them. Now, of course, I say I'm the single player guy. We do have a guy who's a little more familiar with standard. Empty, do you think we should see Reusable Partling back?
Reprints in general, I'm definitely not opposed to. I think they can be really helpful to sort of bring staples back, especially because functional reprints often end up losing a lot of votes just because they're too similar to other cards.
But so do regular
kind of
reprints for the same reason.
Yeah. For this card in particular, I don't think it needs a reprint. It basically had no impact while it was in standard, and now it has like it's going to have an even harder time having impact the second time around. I don't think it'd really be adding too much to bring it back.
Okay. The Cloud of Data is a 4-drop neutral 3/3 elemental software from Uplink with fast and entrance refresh, 2 mana, and your hero active. I didn't know that worked. I'm excited to hear that worked. I think this is a great way to do it. It's on a neutral card. It's on a fast card. Gets you a little bit of the mana back, but it can only be played after turn 4. I could see Kyung Mi using this. I could see Fortuno using this specifically because his active is a little, I mean, he has to pay 2 mana for it, and this gets you the 2 mana back and a 3/3 body. Overall, just really, really neat. I'm sure it might have some use in the other heroes with actives. Marie is due to be reworked, has been reworked. I haven't played with Marie in a hot minute. And then of course there's bird doctors or whatever. Grief, what do you think of this?
Well, just general support for active heroes. We haven't seen too much active hero support in a long while because people didn't really like how actives interacted with Kyungmi, because stuff like the Chariot cared about active or activated abilities, and that meant that it also triggered off of Kyungmi. Since Kyungmi's active is basically free. So you just need to bench a card in hand and then you trigger Chariot. In this case, it's cool because most of the actives already cost like 1 to 2 mana, or I think their cost is now standardized to 2. Even Fortuna can benefit of it because it allows you to draw more cards. So yeah, this is just a very cute card and actually helps out a lot in that specific spectrum. So I would like to see more support cards for actives or hero actives in general. So this is definitely a good step in the right direction. Also, since it's an entrance, you can probably retrigger it via bounce, via flicker. So yeah, pretty cool.
MT, what do you think of this?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I like the design space of refreshing hero actives. This does bring us like one step closer to XP KM getting back in the game. We've seen a couple XP cards get in. So at some point that might happen. I actually think this is not all that helpful for Fortuna though, since you need to get up to 6 mana in order to actually make use of the refresh, which is quite a bit.
True.
Why?
2 mana to use the active the first time, then you play this and refresh it. Because you need, like, otherwise the refresh isn't doing anything.
The thing is, like, software, the thing is, those software and elementals are pretty damn good when it comes to cost reduction.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they have Python, but that's at 5 mana. So you're still waiting until turn 6. Unless you attune them, I guess.
Yeah, so you know, well, I mean, you know, but it's nice that we're at least exploring in this space and something there. Sitting at 7, doing them pretty good. The End of the World is a 5-drop neutral legendary action from Carthian. With Banish your deck, choose any number of those cards to put into your deck in any order, lose 3 HP for each chosen this way, and this card is unplayable for the first 4 turns of the game. Before my co-hosts jump on my case, as they have already forewarned me that they are about to do for this for some, or at least Grief, I wanted to actually take a second and explain my thought process behind this. This card is a reference to a Magic the Gathering card called appropriately Doomsday. Okay, I wasn't being super original with it. I wanted to play around with the whole Carthian reference to the fact that the apocalypse has happened several times in Carthian. And so it technically doesn't violate the I was looking for a card to make a realm to put this card in. Then I remembered the no destroying the world rule that still shows up in the library, and I'm like, Carthian hasn't been destroyed. It's just had a large swaths of it blown up over and over again. But yeah, the effect is a reference to Doomsday, but I wanted to see if there were some more controls we could put on it. First of all, I didn't want it to happen before turn 5. I wanted all the steps building up to it to be legitimate. So that's why it has that second effect. And then I wanted to basically just make it just set up your combo. Whatever your combo is now set up. Go nuts. And then I thought this would be a good deck building opportunity. I think this is the thing where anybody who's a little bit scared of it is terrified of it and voted it down. And then everyone else is like, why'd you put so many restrictions on my Doomsday? But I could be wrong. Grief, what do you think about this?
I think it's basically the last part where, like, oh yeah, people who don't like Doomsday won't like this card. People who like Doomsday don't like this card. Because it's not because of the many restrictions. You could have went with many restrictions, but why the fuck does this card cost 5 mana? Because in the context of collective, we already are a little bit more faster with our combos and stuff. Sure, you're now set up for your next combo, but you've wasted your turn and probably like 6 to 12 HP to set up your next turn that doesn't help you right this instance. Additionally, this kind of interacts very badly with everything that mass banishes your deck, the chars. So this is basically the only reason why you're playing. This is probably chars, because this mass banishes your deck. That's the only reason to play this. Otherwise, there aren't really deck combos that would come to mind that actually benefit from a 4-turn clock for a 5-mana cost neutral card that basically sets you up for the next turn. That normal decks don't do already for way cheaper, better enablers and no restrictions and death cards that you can draw before turn 4. Or turn 5 in this case. Nothing against this card if it only had the on-card restrictions without the silly cost attached to it.
You're
But
saying if it costs
5 mana,
less.
this is not just unplayable for the first 4 turns.
Okay, good. You got your shots in.
Yeah.
So then I guess the question is, do you think that if I improve this by like leaving the unplayable for the first 4 turns and reduce the cost to maybe 1 at that point? So you
the problem is you can't buff it because at that point it just becomes fuel for chars. Like Destabilize got nerfed to silence just so that the char combo deck wouldn't be a thing. And this is a much easier way of doing it since you don't have to run your deck with all 2 or less cost cards in order to do it. You can just run whatever you want. Also,
I see. Okay.
How do you how is it blocked where you can put the cards back in any order?
It's the order you select them.
Yeah, that's been always the case.
Yeah.
So okay, so it could not go beneath 3 costs, is what you're telling me specifically.
I mean,
the thing is, like, you have to silence your deck first before banishing.
Yeah. But you can't silence your deck because what if it put copies in? That would work. Because if you silence your deck, silence is permanent, and then you put the cards back in and they're just textless.
And then most of your preparation, if you had like, okay, cool, my cost reduction effects were actually meant to be okay, now I see. Yeah, this is kind of a very awkward space.
I mean, it's a legendary, so like use the whole text box, right?
It's really hard to make.
The thing is, like, I love legendaries, and I love if people use the text space. The problem is, please use it in a very sensical manner. I don't have anything against a wall of text legendaries. Most of them are just ugly, don't make sense, and are just effect piles. This is neither of these. It's just bad.
Well, yeah, it needs some insurance to make it not busted. Okay, I'll play around with this.
I don't hate the idea. It's probably getting there somehow.
Okay.
Yeah, think of it the stranger side. If you make it add copies, then you get non-native synergy.
Yay! Healer checks is the 0 cost neutral curse from nowhere in particular, with double your opponent's HP, gain 1 mana, and draw a card. And it's unplayable if you have less than 5 max mana.
First of all, why is this a healer's hex and not a witch doctor's hex?
It's a healer hex. It's not a hex, it's a shex.
I know. I'm just ignoring that pun. Because that would make more sense flavor-wise. if it's a witch doctor or something like that.
Yeah, this is I don't know what's going on. MT, why did you pick this card? I'm confused.
It's bizarre. I don't know what to make of it. It was like I saw it and I was immediately confused, and yeah, that that led to me picking it. I mean, it's pretty good if you have like an alternate win condition deck where you don't care about your opponent's HP. I mean,
Do we have those except Mill?
sorta. I mean, against like an aggro deck, if you're running control, like you don't care if they have twice as much HP. You're gonna win by them running out of cards, not HP.
Grief, what do you think of this?
I'm not drunk enough for this episode.
Okay.
Okay. Let on a more serious note. Why does this have the 5 max mana restriction?
It'd be pretty bust if it didn't.
Yeah, the thing is like, okay, it would be quote unquote pretty busted if it didn't. The meaning of that is more like, okay, cool. Cut the gain mana and just make a cantrip and cut a freaking unplayable max mana, and then you have an actually interesting card. Because every time I want to draw a card with this card, I'm doubling my opponent's HP, and if I'm not actually running an extremely aggressive aggro plan or have some good way of raising HP beforehand and then just using it as a counter right after, this would make it an extremely cool, very strong but very cool design cantrip effect for 0 mana. Because the drawback of actually doubling your opponent's HP is a pretty reasonable one. Because depending on the state of the game or when you actually utilize this card, the threshold of actually making this a drawback or not is actually pretty interesting, because there's a real thought behind how much you raise your HP of your opponent. With the entire setup that it is in right now, I don't really understand why this has to ramp, and if it has to ramp, why does it have to have the max mana HP, max mana threshold? Couldn't there be a turn threshold? Whatever this is like, or like, okay, you gain mana for the next turn, so you can actually stack up HP or stack up mana for the next turn, so you can actually do something with the cards you've drawn. This just needs longer to cook. Like, holy shit. Nothing against Zinker.
Yeah.
There's a design idea behind that. The execution is just kind of baffling.
I was, yeah, this whole thing baffles me. And then I was thinking about this and I was like, this also means if we put this card into the collection, we can never get like a healing hate, like false cure style card that turns healing into life loss, which I'd like to have one of those cards one of those days.
Oh, we do have that though.
We do?
Yeah, that's already in the game.
What is it?
It's like the Oni. Ushi Oni Soul Burner. When your opponent gains HP, they lose twice that much. It's a 2-mana 2/3 in mine.
Okay, so we can't print this card ever.
That's why it has the max mana restriction. It's so you can't win the game on turn 2.
Yeah.
You gotta wait until turn 5 for that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like, even if you had to wait till turn 5, that is just a game-winning 2-mana combo. Let's not.
I think I like Symmetry Burn. I don't have anything against it. I like Nurse Burn combos.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the name of that card. I knew that Yu-Gi-Oh had a similar thing.
Yeah, Nurse Burn has both bad reactions emoji, and the what was it? It was a Dark Lord Nurse, which both have the effect that any life points that your opponent gains, they lose instead. So that's kind of cool. I like cards using this kind of effect, and yeah, sure, using the double opponent's HP for, oh yeah, you're dead, is pretty cool. That actually makes this card very cool. Yeah. It's still
But
freaking
also
baffling.
unprintable.
It's still pretty baffling.
It is. I agree. It's very baffling. Primordial Spring is a 1-drop strength 0/2 wax elemental placed from Lux with fast and summoned until end of turn. Whenever you target this with a card that costs 1 or more, create a fading copy of it in hand. Fading, for those of you who don't remember, doesn't show up a whole lot, is at the end of the turn, banish this from anywhere. So unlike Ethereal, which is, oh, play me now or lose this, fading is play me now or I will go into banish. Both of them have very distinct use cases. This is, I think, the only thing from the DC that we did today. And I really like this. I think it's really neat. I do think it's a little maybe sad that like it does require you to play every single thing you want to play on it in the same turn. But I think that's maybe fair. So, Empty, what do you think of this?
It's tricky to use, I think. I think the issue with this is that like it's a 1-drop that's very bad on turn 1. What you really want to be doing that with this is playing for the late game, and then when your opponent taps out, you drop this and then spam about to snap until you kill them, which is really fun. The problem is like getting there, and then how worthless this ends up being for the rest of the game.
I like that combo though.
I play the equipment deck like quite a bit, and that's a pretty legitimate combo. Like that situation comes up decently often. I think the issue is like how weak this is in the other cases, especially against aggro, which is Ash aggro is a very common matchup right now. That it might not see play, but it's a really cool design. I'm not sure why they chose fading instead of ethereal.
So it doesn't clog the graveyard. Which so it then becomes that ethereal becomes the more unit keyword and fading becomes the more action keyword. So the card has to cost 1 or more. Okay, that's a nice little bit of fairness. I didn't even really pay attention to that. It can be a unit, but it can't because fading. Yeah. So like if it was ethereal, then you could just create a bunch of
guess
units.
That's why. But that wouldn't be too strong. That'd be completely fine if it was ethereal.
Yeah.
Like, there's not much you can do with that.
Grief, what do you think of this?
I don't hate it. I find it pretty cool that you can basically copy any kind of 1-cost card, because you will probably only utilize this with 1-cost cards, always to actually discount your 2+ mana cards. Okay, cool. Now do you cost 1 mana, and that's basically it. But you need a bit of setup to actually get there. So you need to, you cannot play this turn 1, basically turn 2. You need a lot of mana, and hopefully this doesn't die in the setup in the turn you actually play it. Because, okay, cool, you now have all your resources, you play this, they kill it. Well, shite, hopefully you have a plan B, or can utilize your target effects somewhere else. And hopefully you didn't need the create multiple copy instances of that specific 1-cost or 2-cost reduced, 3-cost reduced card in hand. If so, well, sucks to be you. Outside of that, it's just a very interesting design. And not really the type of playstyle that I kind of care too much about. because most of the time these kinds of well, quote unquote infinite mana setup interactions that I usually like in games don't really work well with collective.
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really neat idea. It's at 5. It's in the DC. Just vote it in, guys. We're gonna do so much. We're gonna have so much fun with it. Primordial Spring is gonna be our favorite card, and it's gonna totally redefine the meta, and it'll be awesome. And just wait and
On
see.
the topic of the DC, by the way, the DC was voted in by patrons. A few, me included, of the patrons actually voted on the Spring DC, thinking it would be spring themed, like the season. Not reading that there was an S attached to it in the description of caring about springs. That's why I absolutely hate this DC.
I thought it was funny.
As a patron, this is a DC that I voted on that I didn't want it because I thought it was a differently themed one.
No.
And it's not only me who thinks that way.
Well, go make you a spring chicken. Or spring something else.
No, sorry, stranger. This is actually a topic that some of the patrons actually consider ending their patron subscription for. So yeah, no, this was actually an annoying case.
Yeah.
I didn't even vote on that one.
Sorry, what?
I didn't even vote on that one.
Okay, halting the share. We had a fun week. There were a lot of cool cards in this week. I really enjoyed it. I don't know about you guys. Thank you, Grief, as always, for joining me and providing your witty commentary and not being too mean to me about the end of the world.
Oh, I was probably meaner to Empty this episode.
Yeah, I think maybe. I don't know. Empty, thank you for joining me. Can you tell me a little bit about that new picture behind you? It's not as cool as the picture of that beach we were going to go visit together, but it's a nice picture.
Yeah, it's a picture of Nicobolas.
Oh, I see it now. I like it. Very neat. Okay. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do all of those things. If you are subscribed, hit the unsubscribe button and then hit the subscribe button again. Okay. Remind me why I'm doing this. And then talk about the episode in general. Tell me what you're thinking. Keep on playing collective and keep on voting on cards. Bye.
Bye.